Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me today, both on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. Thanks so much for joining me so that I can share with you a little bit a lesson recap for my week. All my K through 5 lesson plans, I'm going to share just a little bit about each lesson and some elements from that. I'm also planning on doing a deep dive on my 5th grade lessons for the week, where I share all of the resources and ideas and things that I use as I teach my 5th grade kiddos today. Move Instagram over just a little bit so you can see a little bit better. One thing that I wanted to share before I got started today is that so many people have talked a little bit about the resources or how they're using the lessons that I've shared in their own classroom. That's so cool. I really appreciate all the messages and comments and posts on my page about, hey, I'm using this lesson and it's working really well, or I bought this puppet, or whatever. I think that's super cool and sort of hilarious, and so I really appreciate all those messages. Want to comment about today's lesson that I'm going to share. I have shared this before. I shared a little bit about the lesson I'm going to share today, my deep dive into 5th grade, on my podcast. If you've never checked out my podcast, you can find it in the Apple iTunes Store, on Spotify, Google Play, or whatever the Google store is called, Stitcher and TuneIn and SoundCloud. If you search for Make Moments Matter or my name, David Rao, you should be able to find that. The song I'm going to talk about in 5th grade today is Tideo, and that's episode 13 on the podcast. So I think I'm on episode 30 something on the podcast. So some of those older episodes have a lot of cool lessons that you might really enjoy. So just a heads up, you can always check through those old episodes anytime you want, or if you go to makemomentsmatter.org/podcast, you can see sort of a list of what I've talked about, and it gives sort of a breakdown about each episode of the podcast. So if you're interested, after the video is over, I always take a couple minutes after the video is over to sort of go through what I've talked about, and if there's anything that's really cool or I think you might be interested in, I put a link to that. If you go to my blog, which is makemomentsmatter.org/video, you can click the the Musical Mondays recap, which is what these videos are called, Musical Mondays. And for today, I'm going to list all of the things I talk about. So I already have a couple of links there to a couple of resources I know I'm going to talk about. But if other things come up, like a book or a resource or something that I've talked about, that someone leaves a comment like, hey, what's that song, or what's, whatever, I'll put a link to that so that you guys can go back and find those resources later. If I don't mention it or don't say something, please leave a comment that says, hey, could you put that in the notes, or could you put that in the links, and I'll be happy to do that. I try and go through after the video's over to leave that information, but sometimes I forget. So if you leave that comment, that's really helpful. But like I said, that's at makemomentsmatter.org/video. If you're on Instagram, there's a link, I think, in my profile. And if you're on Facebook, in the comment or the caption for this video, it's the bottom link in there. So that's available too if you're interested. And on that page on my blog, I have pinnable images. So if you're like, that's a cool idea, I want to think about that later, you can pin it and save it for later. Okay, one more thing before I get started. I'm getting really excited. A week from Saturday, I'm going to be in Greenville, South Carolina, presenting for the Foothills Untitled Chapter in South Carolina. And I'm so excited about some of the songs and lessons that I'm going to share in that weekend. If you're interested, you can come to that training if you're in the area. If you're in South Carolina, I know some people are coming down from North Carolina, which is really crazy. But if you're interested in that, if you go to my page, which is Make Moments Matter on Facebook, there's an event on the side. You can click event, and then it'll take you to information about where you can find the Foothills chapter, where you can get registered, and all of that. Okay, enough talking about stuff that's going to happen or has happened or whatever. I'm ready to talk about lessons. As I go through the lessons this week, I really do appreciate your comments and questions, because it's just so interesting to see what you say, like, oh, I use that song, but I use it like this, or I've never heard of that version, here's my version. Or when people ask questions, it's cool to see other teachers who are also watching answer that in the feed. It's cool to go back and say, like, hey, we're a community, we're talking to one another. You're not just watching some dude in his home office talk about his lessons for the week. You're actually commenting and talking together. So that's really cool. So if you're watching here on the feed today, I would really appreciate if you do leave questions if you have a question, and leave a comment if you have a comment, leave a snarky remark if that's what you're into. And also, when you comment or give a question for other people who have also commented, that's really cool. And it helps everyone. So Yeah, leave comments, leave questions. So I'm really excited. The last couple weeks when I've done these videos, I've had to say, so I'm still teaching those lessons I talked about a week ago. I'm still teaching those lessons I taught 2 weeks ago. And that's because my school is weird. I have 1,200 students. I'm on an 8-day rotation. And so I see my students once every 8 school days. So in September, we had a week-long fall break because we're on this long balanced calendar where we have an extended school year. And so I taught like lesson 1 on Thursday. We had a fitness day on Friday, so no lessons. Then I had a week off. And then, I mean, just stuff happened where it just sort of piled up and I didn't have new lessons. So like this week, it's like new stuff and my brain is like sighing relief that I'm actually teaching something different. So I'm excited to share some new, different lessons with you. And if you're like, why did he keep teaching those same lessons for so long? It's because I'm on a weird schedule. So anyway, I envy all of you who see kids every other day or every 4 days or whatever, because I see them once every 8 school days. I'm jealous. So let me just go through all of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons for the week and sort of give you a brief overview. And if there are any cool highlights, I'll sort of pull that out, but just a really brief overview of what I'm doing with my different grades. So kindergarten, as you may remember from other videos, I always start with this Choo-Choo train song. It leads us through the room. Basically, it's just a fun song to get them singing. They really like it. They like acting like a train, and I love that when they're in the hallway in a line, then they come into my classroom in a line, and we like circle around the room in a line, and it just is a simple transition from line in the hallway to whatever we want them to do in the classroom. Eventually, I bring our line around and make a big circle. So I love being able to do that. But since this is week 5 with kids, and they're used to this by now, so now I make things a little tricky, and I always say, like, you know, I'm the engine of the train. I know where I'm leading. Do you know where the tracks are? No, I know where the tracks are. So you got to follow me. So I've sort of trained them to like walk really closely behind the person in front of them. And this time when we're going around in, you know, different patterns around the room, maybe we're doing a circle, maybe we're doing a swirl or whatever, I intentionally sort of cut through the line. So if like we're going like this, I like circle back so I can cut through the kids who are still walking, who are like still following. Because for a second, those kids who are like, I'm cutting through their line, you can see this instant flash of panic, like, now what? And then they just smile and they think it's so much fun that like I'm cutting our train through the train. And so then I do it again, and then they're giggling and they're having fun, but then they problem solve and they figure out how to get through the train back to re-link up with the train. It's one of my most favorite things to do with kindergarten, because I really am asking them, without saying anything, I'm asking them to problem solve and to figure out how to do that. So it's a hoot, and I love doing that with kindergarten. So that's how I start with my Choo-Choo train song. And then we do Let Everyone Clap Hands Like Me. That's something we've done for the last lesson or 2. This time I clap, let everyone clap hands like me, let everyone pat knees like me, and then maybe I do like let everyone pat head like me, and then I say, man, I'm out of ideas. What do you think we could do? And I let them come up with some different ideas. We do our little copycat song, or a little game. It's the first time or maybe the second time these kids have done it, and they love it. We just copy some really basic rhythmic patterns. Then I pull out one of my favorite lessons from Lynn Kleiner. If you don't know Lynn Kleiner, who is the brain behind Music Rhapsody, you should look her up. I went to a couple workshops that she gave when I lived in Kansas, and I bought one of her books, and I basically used everything out of it, and so I bought all of her other books. But the book that I use for this lesson is called SOS, Songs of the Sea. And there's this song called Sandy Sand, where it's just a fun song. The first part you do a little steady beat with the kids. The second part there's sort of a call and response. You got sand on your shoulder, oh yeah. You got sand on your forehead, oh yeah. Wherever you want to put the sand. And then they get to shake all the sand off. That would be fun all on its own. But I pull out my egg shakers and I say they're full of sand. And then so they take the egg shaker full of sand and they put it on their forehead or they put it on their shoulder or wherever. And then when they shake it off, they shake their bodies and they shake the egg shaker. And they think that's like maybe the most amazing thing in the world. And it is pretty awesome. So we do that, and that's nice because it has steady beat and it has echoes, call and response, and it has an instrument. And then I bring out Grizzly, my puppet, Grizzly the bear, and he teaches kids about their shouting voice. I've talked about using puppets for the 4 voices before, so I'm not going to bore you with that again. But in case you haven't heard me talk about that, I do have an entire video about how I use the puppets for the 4 voices. Grizzly is the last in the set, and he teaches them about shouting voice, and it's hilarious. And that's kindergarten, because usually that takes about the 45 minutes, because each of those things goes a little bit long. First grade, they come in, they do the circle song, we do a little copycat game, and with first and second grade this time I've added something in new. So when we do copycat, it's just a little poem, a little copycat poem. It could be any poem you want. And then I do echo clapping. I'll clap a 4-beat pattern, they clap it back. I clap a new one, they clap it back. I clap a new one, and they clap it back. And then I say the poem again. And then maybe I'll do a vocal exploration. Whoop, and they go whoop, and I go ooh, and they go ooh, you know. So we do a vocal exploration back and forth. I always give them a visual to go with it. We do that back and forth 3 or 4 times. We say the poem again. Then we'll maybe do padding patterns or whatever, and then we say the poem again. Eventually I'm going to add in solfege, where they'll copy that and copy me doing that. You can add in really whatever you want, and the reason I started doing these, I saw a really wonderful teacher who I observed, Andrew Ellingson, doing it. I thought it was brilliant, but I loved it especially for my classroom, to steal his idea from my classroom, because I see kids so infrequently that, you know, once every 8 days is not a lot of time. So in that copycat game, I can bring in echo clapping, I can bring in rhythm, I can bring in vocal exploration, I can bring in solfege, I can bring in song snippets, I can bring in really whatever I want. And so what I've added in this week, I do, you know, padding, and then I do vocal exploration, I do whatever, and I end with clapping, and then I have them clap. And I sort of talked about these in my Instagram stories, and I put it in the Instagram highlights in case you want to go back and look at this. But I bring out my hand drums, and so I start by talking about how we clap. And this is a great idea that I saw Beth Ann Hepburn talk about at my amazing ORF chapter just a few weeks ago. She was the presenter. And she talked about clapping, and how instead of clapping here in the middle, if you have them put a hand on the side and clap like this, first of all, that it has them cross the midline, and it helps them, because they're keeping it all on one side, it helps their brain process the action a little bit easier, but also then it's a quick transition to hand drums. So you put a hand drum in that hand and it's the same action. So that's what I do with this lesson. And I pull out my hand drums, I give them to every other student, or every third student, or whatever if you want. We do some echo back and forth clapping, and then they rotate, they give the drum to the next person. I love doing it because they're clapping back, they're playing with the instruments, and then they have to share with the person next to them. So it's teaching them how to hold and handle the instrument, how to play the instrument. We're echoing back simple patterns, and we're sharing with neighbors, and all in just a few minutes. I shared on my Instagram stories, and now it's in the highlights under the instruments tab. But I shared on there a little bit about how I use hand drums and how I organize them. And in Facebook, if you're interested in that, you can find it on Instagram. But I color code the insides, and I sort of make that process of putting back the drums a little bit easier. So if you're interested, check that out in the stories. So we do the little copycat. We do the grizzly bear song. Grizzly bear, oh grizzly bear was sleeping in a cave. And Grizzly the bear comes out, obviously my puppet. We sing through the song, and there's a really fun chase game that goes along with it. I'm pretty sure I've talked about that before in a video or a podcast somewhere. I think in a podcast, actually. But what I've added this time, because it's fall, it's still super hot in Atlanta, but I know it's officially fall. So I talk a little bit about bears and hibernating and why the bear is going into the cave. And so it's sort of a fun tie-in with what is actually happening or getting ready to happen now. And so why is the bear in the cave, and why would he be angry if he got woken up? And so that's a sort of a fun little tie-in that we go into. We see the puppet I showed several weeks ago. That's the butterfly that goes from the caterpillar into the chrysalis into the butterfly. He emerges this week. He's been asleep for like a month and a half. But I mean, for them, it's just the next class period. But he emerges from the chrysalis in this lesson. We use our whisper voice around him. But it's also fun because we talk about the bear who's been eating lots of food to go into the cave, and then we talk about the caterpillar who's been eating a lot of food to go into the chrysalis, and then how they're emerging differently. Well, the bear gets woken up and he gets angry and he comes out. But the butterfly, when it emerges from the chrysalis, it's a very different story. And at the end of class, we do a song called Matilda the Gorilla. You can find versions of this sort of all over. I know Lynn Kleiner does have a version of this in her book called Jungle Beat, but the version I do is just sort of different. But it's nice because there's a verse and a chorus. On the verse, I do steady beat somewhere on my body, and on the chorus, we sing. And kids love that song. Second grade, I just said, the Copycat, we do that. We add in the drums for second grade. Just like first grade, essentially, they love it. They think it's great. They love to be able to use the drums that fast, that early in the beginning of class. We do our attendance. I've done that for K1. I just sort of didn't talk about it. We do our attendance, but at the end of attendance, which I've been doing, where is Jeremy? Here I am. There you are. We switched over to singing back. Sing back, here I am. Instead of just going, here I am, we're singing back now, which is going, okay, some kids need that reinforcement of singing voice, but they eventually get it. At the end of asking, like, where is Robin? And they sing back. Or where is Kelly? And they sing back. I do, where is Sally? And there are no Sallys in my second grade. But that's a lead into Little Sally Walker. I've done this before with second grade. Where is Charlie? And they're like, Charlie? And it turns out to be Charlie Over the Ocean. So they're on it. They know, they're like, we don't have a Sally. You're talking about that song. But we do that one pretty quick, and it's very fun. Then I do the song 7 Jumps. If you've never tried 7 Jumps, just like Matilda the Gorilla, there are a variety of options with that. But my version, I sort of break it all down before I have them try it with the music. So we do part by part. And I sort of preview, here's what's going to happen next. Here's what's going to happen next. We sort of walk through different things. And then we try with the music, and they love it. 7 Jumps is an eternal favorite in my classroom. Like I said, if you don't know it, I'll put a link in the notes for this video, but you can find different versions on YouTube and different ways to do it. It's just a really fun song. And then what second grade does, and this is a fun first time for them, they go to the note neighborhood for the very first time. And they meet ta, quarter note, and they meet ta di, eighth notes, and they meet ta rest, and that's a quarter rest. So it's fun to go to the note neighborhood for the first time. Some of you might be like, second grade, you're just now introducing notation. Because I see them so infrequently, I've sort of been testing something out for the last year and a half, and I've not talked about iconic or real notation. I've talked about iconic notation. We've done some of that. We've dictated in things with bottle caps or counters or all different sorts of things, popsicle sticks. We've never actually done standard notation, and I'm not sure what to think about it yet. When I first started teaching, I started it in kindergarten, and then I started realizing why am I doing that? I moved it back to first grade, and then once I moved to this new school, I was like, ooh, I don't know, it still seems early, so I'm waiting until second grade. I heard Jill Trinka once said, if you don't see kids more than one, or at least once a week, you shouldn't be doing iconic notation until second grade. And so I'm trying that out. I don't know what the results are yet. I'm still figuring that out. But if anyone has thoughts on that, if anyone else has this wonky long schedule where you see kids maybe once every other week or every second or third week, I'd love to hear what you think about that, because basically what that means that I'm not experiencing that until second grade is that in kindergarten and first grade, we're doing a lot more moving, a lot more singing, a lot more playing, a lot more experiencing, and not really any iconic notation that matches that. And honestly, I like the focus on singing and playing and doing, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how my current second graders and my third graders, how they deal with notation. So we'll see in the next year. I will report back. But if anyone has a thought about that or comment about that, I'd love to hear your comments. Third grade, we're getting ready for our big concert that's coming up. Our concert is the week before Thanksgiving. So in the last rotation, we did our own compositions using the rhythmic words and using my little rhythm sort activity. I saved all of their compositions, and we're going to pull those back. And my plan for using that in the concert is that there's a poem that brings everything together that I shared in a video a couple weeks ago. And what I'm planning on doing is up on the projector behind students, I'm going to have pictures of them actually doing the activity in class and, cards scattered all over and rearranging and whatever. And then we're going to do the poem, and then one group will do, what will you add to the stew? And one class will say, we'll put in some pumpkin too. What will you add to the stew? We'll put in some mushrooms too. And then as we go down the line, maybe one class, instead of doing the back and forth, what will you add to the stew? Maybe they'll read their word chain. I'm still figuring that all out, but I want parents to see that like we are composing and arranging, and here's what it looks like in class, like pictures. And also here's an outcome. Here's what they created. And I'm hoping also to put up the other compositions kids have made in the hallway leading into the gym, so like parents can see it going in and going out. I just want parents to feel like they can like see into the classroom a little bit more, and so I hope that does that for the concert. But it is the week before Thanksgiving, so one of the songs we're doing is called Shoo Turkey, and I wrote a blog post about this. You can find it in Step It Down, which is a really wonderful resource book by, I think, Bessie Jones. Of course, I can't remember her name right now. Step It Down by Bessie Jones and Bess Lomax Hawes. It's a really wonderful book. You can find a version of it in here. I wrote a blog post about it, so you can find a version there. But we're doing a version where they're going to be moving and they're going to be singing, and there's a call and response, and it's going to be super fun. And then I know it's a little bit young for my third graders, but we're doing a version of 5 Fat Turkeys where one kid will be the cook, and 5 turkeys are in the tree, and then they fall out of the tree, and it's going to be an experience that the audience, I hope, will love and also will think is pretty fun. Fourth grade, we're also prepping for a concert, this one in December, which feels crazy, but I looked at my schedule and I'm going to see them like 6 times, maybe 7 times before their performance. So that's not a lot of time. Anyway, so what we're starting with, we're doing a musical by John Jacobson, and I believe there's another composer tied to it called a holiday musical. In my, all my concerts for all my grades, K and 1 are really more informances. Second grade is really in more of an informance too. Third grade is really sort of trending that way, even though there's a little bit more canned music, I guess, that'll go into it. There'll be a couple songs that are that way. Fourth grade, the tradition is we do a musical. Like, that's what I was told in my interview. And so we do this holiday musical, even though I don't know, changing it a little bit. But I want kids in their elementary experience at least 1 year to experience that musical thing, because for some kids, that is such a hook. For some kids, that musical experience is just so much fun, and they love the costumes, and they love the experience, they love performing, and so I want them to have a taste of that somewhere in their K through 5 experience. I do think the informances are great. I don't love all of the work that I have to put into these musicals, but I don't do a super huge, like, Disney Junior or whatever. I do more of a John Jacobson, and I think there is some real value in this program. Specifically, there's a song that has a partner song. There's some basic harmonies. There's a chance for a solo for one student. There are just a lot of really valuable things in this musical. So I know some people love canned musicals and only do that. Some people don't like canned musicals and hate on it. I think we all have opposing views, but what I've tried to do everywhere I've taught is 1 grade does an informants at least. 1 grade does something maybe folk song related. 1 group does more instruments. 1 group has a canned musical. 1 group so that each grade has something different and they get to experience different things as they rotate through the grades. So anyway, all that to say, 4th grade, we're preparing our musical, and it's a holiday musical. It's a hilarious story about a moose who wants to pull Santa's sleigh. So what's not to love about that? There is definitely a song where they get to go, I could fly if you believed in me, and it's adorable. So anyway, that's what's coming up for 4th grade. And we started our first song in that. 5th grade is the grade that I'm going to do my deep dive on, and so I won't do a quick overview. I'm just going to sort of run through that. Thanks to people who have already left great comments. I see a couple people on Facebook Live who've mentioned extensions for the 7 Jump song, and I see, Marlene, you're talking about notation, and I will read your full comment even though I can't see it right there. But thanks so much for your comments. And I saw something else on Instagram before I talk about 5th grade. I think the train song, I hope that worked out for you. And let's see. Oh, I also see that you said you got a hug strap in the mail. Oh, can't wait to see pictures on your Instagram. Very excited. Okay, well, let me talk about 5th grade. So 5th grade, they come in and they come into their assigned seats. One of the things I'm trying for 5th grade for their attendance, I played around with this a little bit last year, of giving students something to read or something to clap or some sort of thing where instead of hello Johnny or hello Juan or hello, whoever I'm seeing at that time, Brayley or whoever, instead of singing back and forth with 3, 4, 5, I'm doing something different where I'd be like, okay, Madison, and then she claps back, or Madison 2, or next Madison, because I have a lot of those. I would clap back or something. One of the things I've been trying is a rhythm reading. Again, just to sort of make that really quick attendance thing curricular and to give us another chance to interfere, or I don't know the word I'm thinking of, interact with that content in a very quick way. So one of the things I played around with last year and I'm sort of bringing back to play around again is using rhythm reading in our attendance. So every time I've tried to show my computer on here, it just doesn't work and you can't see it. So I'm expecting that's going to happen. Looks like Instagram's going to be able to see it, but I don't know if Facebook, you can sort of see that. So what I have basically here are just a line on top and a line on bottom with some really basic rhythms. And this is really one of the first times that we sort of go back and talk about those since the beginning of the school year. We just haven't had a lot of chance to talk about that because we've been experiencing a lot. So what I do for the attendance here is we talk about those rhythms, like we decode them as a class first, and then we read them as a class, and we go through just to remind kids, what does this sound like? What does this sound like? And even in 5th grade, I have some new kids to my room, and so they don't know that we use Takadimi or whatever. And so this is my chance to say like, oh, you might have called this Ta or TT at your school, and I call this Ta and Tadi at this school. And so this is a chance to do that. But what we do then is we read a couple as a class, and I have this very rudimentary PowerPoint that I've created. I'm still working on that. But what we do is we read the whole slide as a class, and then I say, okay, front row, read the top line. Ready, here you go. And then the front row reads it. I'm like, all right, great. Second row, read the bottom line. Ready, go. And they read the second line. And I do each row, or maybe I'll do, by the family. Okay, strings family, you read the next one. Ready, go. And, I've got my clicker. And as I'm doing that, I'm just quickly doing attendance on my iPad as they're doing that. What I'm planning to do, and what we did last year, and it actually worked out pretty well, is that I said, okay, great. So, Rachel, read the top one. Ready, go. And it took several times of us doing this as a class before I ever asked one kid to do it on their own. But it was cool because you could see kids and they got to do it by themselves. There was a real value in, these kids hearing another kid do it, hearing another kid speak. And so I'm trying to do that again with this grade to see how it works. And I'm starting out with the really easy, the half notes and quarter rests and eighth notes, just to give them something very easy to do so that they are successful right away. And I always try and start with kids who I know have had this content before, so it's not like I'm throwing somebody new from another school who's new to our school in the deep end right away. I usually start with the kids who have done this before. So, like I said, this resource is something I'm still sort of working on for my own use. I don't have it in my TPD store, but if you're interested, send me a message and say like, here's what I'd love to see in this. I'm still figuring that out for myself and for others. But this is something I'm trying, and it worked pretty well last year, and I'd love to see how it works again this year, just so that kids are getting, like I said, it's just 5 minutes of class where I do attendance and then ask each kid to do it. But that moment where they get the solo or get to speak it by themselves or read it by themselves is really empowering. So I'm excited to see how this goes. But that's what I do for attendance, is that I use this basic, the basic rhythm reading, and then we sort of go from there. So I'm going to talk about the song Tidy-O today, If you know that song, great. Some people call it pass one window or skip one window, or something like that. But I took sort of a different approach with it maybe this time. Maybe I just talked about this in the podcast because I did share this on podcast number 13. So maybe I shared about this way that I do it. I don't know. But I've had a hard time with some folk songs, like getting a good hook to bring kids in or getting them excited about it. And so with this one, I start with asking kids, what's your favorite fast food restaurant? And they give out a couple names. And I was like, great. Has anyone ever been to a fast food restaurant that has, a drive-through window? And they raise their hand. Great. Anyone been to one with 2 drive-through windows? They're like, oh yeah. So, some people raise their hand. And I'm like, what about 3 drive-through windows? And most kids are like, no, that doesn't exist. And some kids have or say that it has. And so we go through and we talk about, well, what would the 3 windows be for? And some kids are like, well, one is to order and one is to pay and one is for your food. And then I'm like, but have you ever ordered at a window? Not very frequently. So then we talk about the different things it could be. And some people like, pay at one and get drinks the next and get food the next, or, pay at one and then maybe you get food the next, and if there's a third, it's if you have to wait, or I don't know. So we sort of talk about that, all of that to get into the Tideo song, which talks about passing windows. For kids, I don't think that that's super relatable. I don't know if they have, a reason to get hooked on that. So when they think about it as maybe a drive-through window, that's sort of fun for them. And it's fun to make the folk song more relevant to these times. I don't know. So that's sort of where we go, and it's sort of funny to talk about that. And then I say, great, I've got a song about 3 different windows. And then I sing the song. Pass 1 window, tidy-o. Pass 2 windows, tidy-o. Pass 3 windows, tidy-o. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. I say, I have some very basic actions that I'm going to do with this song. See if you can do the actions with me. Pass 1 window, tidy-o. Pass 2 windows, tidy-o. Pass 3 windows, tidy-o. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. And usually I say, can you figure out what the word is that's made up? Because we did this in the last couple lessons. And they say tidy-o, and I'm like, yeah, it's not a real word, so don't worry about it. So then we do our actions, pass 1, pass 2, pass 3. The next time I say, I'm going to add another action. Pass 1 window, tidy-o. Pass 2 windows, tidy-o. Pass 3 windows, tidy-o. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. So jingle at the window, jingle at the window. Great. So then they try that. And so then we do the whole thing where they try that. I'm great, I'm going to add something else. So the next time I add, jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. And I keep sort of repeating. By this time I say, if you know the words, sing along. And then we do the whole thing. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. We do it, over and over and over. I say, I'm going to change another thing. Oh, another thing you're going to change. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. So then they have to do pass 1 window, tidy-o. Pass 2 windows, tidy-o. Pass 3 windows, tidy-o. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Oh my gosh. So then they do that whole thing. This is a setup for something I'm going to do with partners later on. So they sort of need to know this part. But we do all of that. And when kids are successful with that, I say, great, I'm going to do something new. In fact, I'm going to throw out all of the actions from before. None of those actions. Remember them for later, but for now, I'm going to do something different. And I do a basic pattern for a bourdoon, something that a bourdoon is an ostinato pattern that a lot of Orff-trained teachers use. It's an accompaniment pattern, but a bourdoon is basically a fifth. It's that drone pattern that you often hear about when you talk about Orff Schulwerk, if you're not an Orff Schulwerk aficionado. But it's that pattern in the bass line where it's the slow sort of repeating pattern. And the like international calling sign for Orff folks is this one where you go, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Both hands are playing, both hands are going, and that pattern repeats over and over. my kids have done this, so like they know this pattern and they know what I'm going to do with it. So they're like immediately like, all right, great. So they pat on their knees, because the patting, in previous lessons, they've done the patting and then they know that that's going to lead to the instruments. And so they're like, all right, we're on it. So they do the patting as I'm singing. Pass one window, tidy-o. Pass two windows, tidy-o. Pass three windows, tidy-o. Jingle at the window, tidy-ho. Jinglin', jinglin', jinglin' Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-ho. This is like the most basic bourdon you could do that goes into an accompaniment pattern. What I teach my kids to say as they're patting, because there's a real value to adding words in with that pattern. I've just seen it over and over. I mean, I learned about this in my ORF levels, but I've seen it over and over and know that it's true in my classroom, that if kids are not saying some sort of word, either out loud or in their head, they do not sync up as well with each other or with the song as when they are saying the words. Like when they say the words, they stay more steady on the beat and they stick together with each other. And so Mary on Facebook has already said it. The pattern that we say is, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? You could change it. You could change it for this song. You could say like, pass one window now. Pass. You could change it up. But for my sake, when I don't see kids very often, why? They know, will you be my friend? Let's just use that same phrase because they know it. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not changing something that they already know. I'm continuing on using that thing they've already known. So we try, will you be my friend? And we do that. They're sitting and they're patting on their knees and saying, will you be my friend? And they're doing the bourdon pattern. And then I sing the song while they do, will you be my friend? Oh gosh, and they do fine. They're 5th grade. They've done this before. So then I say, okay, you sing while you do the pattern. And they try. And some are great at it, some are not. That is, I don't know, it's tricky for them to do. But they can do it. So then what I do the next step is I send some kids to the instruments. Since I have my classes already broken down into the 4 different instrument families, they're 4 teams, but they're named after the instrument families. Since I already have that set up, I send one of the families over to the instruments. And so I actually brought home soprano xylophone. I would normally send kids to basses, or you could send kids to alto xylophones as well. It's really whatever you want to get out of the experience. And I hope, Facebook folks, that you can actually see this. Can you see the xylophone? Yeah, you can see the xylophone. So I send kids over to the instrument, and the first thing I say is, and this is something, it's a prep for basically the rest of the year, is I say, okay, so you have more bars than you need right now, so I'm going to have you take some off. And I set an instrument up in the front of the class to demo this. I say, before you do anything, let me just remind you that the instruments are special, and you got to sort of take good care of them. But one of the things that, we don't need all the bars right now, but I need you to know how to take the bars off. It's going to save us all a lot of time. Besides, you're so smart, you should know how to do this anyway. But each of these bars is really just a bar of wood or a bar of metal. And if you were to hit, to play this, you have to hit it to make it vibrate, and that's going to make the sound. It's actually vibrating. And if it were just sitting on this box and you kept hitting it, it would vibrate and fall off. And that's why the smart people who made these instruments put this little post here. This is really a nail. And they just put this nail here so that the instrument would not fall off. There's a hole in the bar and it fits right over the nail so that when it shakes, it doesn't fly away. And they put that there on purpose. So what you need to know, students, is that when you try and take a bar off, we don't want to hurt or damage the bar or the nail. And so if you lift straight up, it's going to lift right off the nail and not even hardly touch the nail. It's perfect. But if you go like this, you can maybe see that nail is straight up and down, is going to start turning and start bending. And if it bends off or it breaks, then we're in real trouble, because they're a real pain to put back on or to fix. And I'll say, like, you'll have to replace the whole instrument because, like, those poor kids. I don't want to put the fear of God in them about that. So I just say, so instead just lift straight up. And then what I do in my class, I say, put the bar in the box. I do that a couple reasons. You could take it all the way out, whatever. It depends on maybe what you're doing. But for me, I just leave the bar in the box because it doesn't really affect the sound all that much. It doesn't really affect how they're playing, and it makes putting the bars back on like 1,000 times easier, because all I have to do is take the bar that's right there and put it on. Whereas if they had, you know, like 3 bars, you know that they're going to put the tiny little F where the big F is supposed to be, and they're going to put things in the wrong places. So if they're already in the right place, that makes like everyone's life easier. So I take this time to talk about taking the bars off, and it makes my life a lot easier later. Okay, so just a quick thing for all of you who are watching, listening, that I don't talk about with my students, but I have different types of mallets. I had to replace a bunch of my mallets last year because the yarn was coming off, and I called West Music and I said, like, what can I do? And they talked about these American drum mallets. I am not a rep for American drum, but these mallets so far have been great, and there are 3 different kinds. I think there are only 3. But they're sort of soft, medium, and hard. I think the yellows are the most soft. So that gives me a really nice sound to use in my classroom. The blues, maybe, are medium. Ooh, that sounds hard. Blue and the red, I think, are more similar than they are soft. I think maybe the red is medium. If anyone has these and like knows exactly and you want to comment. In this tiny little home office resonator room, blue and red sound very similar. But I like having these because there's no yarn to unfurl on the end, and they do have a really good sound. What I would say is you want to be choosy when you're practicing in class, because it can get real loud real fast. So the softer the mallet, the less sound it's going to make. And the less it's going to aggravate your ears, maybe. So soft mallets, I think, in class are great. Lila says yellow soft. Yes, red is medium, blue is hard. Thank you, Mary, so much. Like I said, I'm in this little echoey room, and I can't hear a difference right now. So I would say use soft mallets when you're practicing in class. If you're going to do performance, use the hard ones or even wooden mallets on your xylophone bars, and that'll help them project more out to the audience. But for when you're in class, soft is great. And if you want kids to practice, a little trick that I've seen people do is, you know, instead of playing with the mallet side, you flip it over and play with the back. And that's great for practice, and it's great to help kids just sort of do their own thing while you're maybe talking to someone else or singing something else. It makes life a lot easier. So kids have just taken off the bars, and my students over on the side, I say, okay, great, you guys, we're going to help them the first time. We're going to do Will You Be My Friend, patting on knees, and then they're going to play the bordoon on the instrument. And you're going to play on C and G if you're at the instrument. I usually have kids doubled up at this point on instruments, so a kid here and a kid here. I just don't have enough instruments in my room, and that works. So they play, and they're going to do Will You Be My Friend. And sometimes with kids, before they do that, I say, guess what? It's the same pattern. Will you be my friend? Will you? You know, and I show them what you just did is the exact thing you're going to do now. Because sometimes the kids don't make that connection. And so saying that to them helps them transfer over the skill. Even though that's really, I mean, you maybe don't have to say that. But I say that because kids, it helps them. So they're playing. And the rest of the class who's just watching, they're actually saying and patting the first time. And so then after the first time through this song, or first couple times, I have them stop, and then they sing. And while they're singing, these kids keep playing the bordoon pattern, and we go on. They do okay or not. Then we go on, and maybe the kids who are sitting down will move on to pass one window, tidy, pass, and doing that while the kids on the instruments are playing the bordoon pattern. It's just an accompaniment pattern, very simple. What the trick is for this song is getting a bordoon that is slow enough for the kids to sing, but also quick enough for these kids to not rush. And that's tricky, and that's just something that is worth working on. So, because if you have them go, pass one window, tidy, yo, pass 2 windows, tidy, yo, pass 3 windows, tidy, yo, jiggle the window, tidy, yo, jingling, 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 yo, jiggle the window, tidy, that just gets really fast. So sometimes I let the kids on the instruments speed up to that speed, just so the rest of the class can be like, no, it's killing us. Because then it really does, it's more of a real world connection, and they do slow down. Okay, so after a couple times through, I have these kids. I always just say, X your mallets, because X the window, they get that from computer, like close out. And so I say X your mallets, which is this, and then I leave them on the bars. Because I don't want them to like fiddle forever trying to like put them in the holes in the end or whatever. I don't want them to do that. And if you don't say something specific about where you leave the mallets, they'll just be like all over. So I say X the mallets and put them on the bars and then stand up and walk away. And then they go out to their spot and I bring in a new family and then we restart the process of how do you play and all of that. I've done a whole video about mallet technique and so and teaching kids some of those tricks and things that might be really helpful. And I put a link to that already in the notes that go along with this video. But if you're on Instagram and you're like, what video? Send me a private message and I'll send you a link to that. But all the tricks of like how do you hold the mallets and how do you teach them to do this and all sorts of things like how to, you know, what do you do in between when the kids have mallets so they're not playing or all the stuff like that. I have a whole video of that, so if you're interested, that's there. Okay, so new kids are on the instruments. I sort of prep them. We go through the same idea of like what bars do you play, C's and G's, and actually as we're taking bars off, I go back to the fast food thing and I say, oh, if we're at a fast food restaurant, we got to take off our burgers and fries. So they've taken off the B's and the F's. There's not a fun equivalent of that of which notes to play. The Cokes and grapes, I don't know. So one kid said Coke and grape soda. So those are the bars that you play, but that just gets sort of confusing. So some kids are playing. And the other kids, this time, now it's the second time that kids have rotated onto the instruments and other kids are doing something else. So this time I say, okay, great, they're gonna play. You all need to find a partner. And they find a partner and I say, great, now this time you're gonna stand and look at your partner and you're gonna do all the actions from before. Pass one window, tidy-o. Pass two windows, tidy-o. Pass three windows, and you're probably gonna be going different directions because if I'm going the right way, my partner's going the right way, it's gonna look we're going in opposite directions, even though we're going the same, you know, really going to the right or whatever. So pass one window, so they're doing their thing. Pass one window, tidy-o, pass two windows, tidy-o, pass one. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Jingling, 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 Joe. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. Okay, great. So they do all of that. We do that for a whole rotation. Some kids are playing, some kids are singing, just showing their partner the action. That seems lame, but they don't feel like that's lame. They're like, you know, this is a confidence builder. I'm not asking them to do anything new. I'm asking them to do the same things before. They're just doing it with a partner. And they like that. So then we rotate on a new group over here. And, you know, one trick that I have that I don't think I talked about in that other video, I'm thinking since I have it, I'll just show you. You know, it's tricky because if you're wandering around the class trying to get all those kids to do their partner stuff and sing, and then still trying to connect up with the kids doing the bordoon, there's this instrument called a frichiwa, and a lot of people use this for world music drumming, but I never took world music drumming, but I found it at a West Music booth at a convention years ago, and it's this thing, it looks like, some people call it an African bell, but it hooks over your finger, and your thumb has a little ring on it. It just makes a clicking sound. The great thing about this is it is not super duper abrasive. It's actually pretty easy for kids to hear and it doesn't cover up or like irritate other parts. So some kids can be singing and the kids who are doing the bordoon pattern can hear this and sync up with it, and I can be anywhere in the room and it is magical. It's like maybe $12 on the West Music website. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon because I buy everything on Amazon, but I'll put a link to that as well. It is a lifesaver because that means I can walk around and I don't have to be standing in front of the kids doing the bordoon going like, well, yeah, be my friend. Because sometimes, you know, like kids just start racing away from the actual tempo, and so that instrument, the frichiwa, and that, I won't spell that because I can barely spell it, but I know I have it in links, and I'll put in the links. It is great to connect with kids even across the room as multiple things are happening. It's great for that. Now, third group of kids have rotated onto the instruments, and Lisa, it's awesome. You should try one. I'll send you a link. It's awesome. So some kids are on the instruments. They're doing the bordoon. Other kids now, my new task for this third rotation is, now instead of going jingle at the window, tidy-o, I'm going to have jingle at the window, tidy-o, and the pattern turns into then you pat with your partner. So that's one new element, and for kids, that's like, oh, so much extra to do. It's not extra to do, it's like one thing, okay? So, but they're doing it. So then some kids are playing, they're doing their thing, I'm checking in with these kids, and then the other kids are doing their jingle at the window, tidy-o, jingling, 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 Joe, jingle at the window, tidy-o. We go through. Honestly, this lesson is a chance for us to be doing multiple things, so I'm okay if we don't add a lot of extra stuff. I want kids to enjoy this process and really take in this process. So I'm okay with these kids getting the experience here on a very simple board doing it, and the other kids getting a simple pattern. I'm okay with all that because it's successful and we're experiencing what that feels like to maybe not have the whole class doing what we're doing, or to be doing solo things or with a partner things, and that's sort of cool. The fourth group that rotates on, I only have 4 groups in my class, so oh my gosh, Susan, thank you so much. It is in the West catalog, and I'll put a link to it too. The fourth group that rotates on is my last group, and so the last thing I asked singers to do today, the last add-in thing that we do, so the pass one window, pass 2 windows, pass 3 windows, jingle at the window, tidy-o. On the jinglin', 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 Joe, they switch spots with their partner. Jingle at the window, tidy-o. That's the last thing that we do today. And then we keep repeating through the song several times. That's basically all we can get done in this particular lesson. There are a lot of really cool things that come next. So let me move this xylophone out of the way. Oh, and I also take time at the end of class, whoever's at the end of class, we take the time to take those bars that are in the boxes and put them back on the xylophone. And I say, everyone needs to watch and pay attention to how this works, because next time you might be the one doing this. So remember, and then we talk about the nail and whatever, and we put them back in spots. I usually make a big deal about taking hand sanitizer afterwards, because I want kids to not pass germs around the school. And so also it's just like a good idea. So as they're walking out, they take hand sanitizer. But we always make sure to talk about putting the bars back on. How do you leave the instrument? How do you walk around, not walking over it? Because I don't have stands for my instruments at this school yet. And so all that procedure stuff, that comes into this lesson. It's one of the first times we really talked a lot about that in this lesson. So next steps. And the next time I see students, there's a really cool game you can have them do where, you could have kids back on the instruments, but you can have that pattern thing we learned with a partner. Pass 1 window, tidy-o, pass 2 windows, tidy-o, pass 3 windows, tidy-o, jingle at the window, tidy-o, jinglin', 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 Joe, jingle at the window, tidy-o. That thing that they did, they built up to that. They easily can access that and bring it back and do that again. And so what we do this time is, first we do it with a partner, and then so we do basically what we ended up with in our this today lesson. What we ended up with is what we sort of start with in the next lesson. Then since we're with our partners, I have you make a circle with a partner, and then one of those partners goes in and one goes out, and then we end up with basically 2 concentric circles where one partner is looking out, one partner is looking in at each other. I hope that makes sense. So me and my partner, I might be on the outside and they might be on the inside, and we're looking at each other. And we do the same thing there. Jingle at the window, tidy-o, switching spots and switching spots, jingle at the window, tidy-o. What you add then to that is, instead of just saying pass 1 window, when you're talking about in class, when you're talking about performances, don't stand behind a door, stand in a window if you want your parents to see you. Well, I use those terms when we talk about things for our concert. So then I say, we're going to pass 1 window. You're going to rotate, the outside circle rotates 1 person to the right because you're going to pass the window. Does that make sense? You're going in. So here I am with my partner. I'm going to pass over to the next person to my right. And this is like a mind-blowing moment for them. But they pass 1 partner, pass to a second partner, pass to a third partner, and then they do jingle at the window, tidy-o, switching spots, jingle at the window, tidy-o. And then the new kids on the outside, they rotate 1 to the right, 1 to the right, 1 to the right. And what that does is that means you get back to your original partner. It's sort of cool. Kids think it's really amazing to see. And it's just a fun little switching game that goes with this song. I have I have lost somewhere in this room. I brought back the book that I shared last week, As American as Apple Pie by Jeff and Randy. And I shared and I was like, this is an amazing book. You should get this book. Tideo is in this book, and it's not the version I shared today. They have different ideas, slightly different stuff that you can do. They have a different orchestration for the Orff instruments. Instead of doing the chord bordune, they do a broken bordune. There are a lot of cool things that you can learn from Jeff and Randy. So that lesson is in there if you want a different version of it. I also have a favorite folk song kit for this song, which I also pull visuals and things from to show my students. So that's another option for this song. I also have a podcast about this song. So there are a lot of cool resources and a lot of avenues you can take. This one lesson today that I shared is not the only way to do it. There are a lot of different ways to do it. So I'll put a couple links to those things in the notes for this video. And like I said, if you're on Facebook, when you access this video at the bottom of the little blurb about it, there's a link that takes you there. If you're on Instagram, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, there should be a thing that says Musical Mondays Facebook Live video archive, so that you can get to that. And I'll put all those links in the next 20 minutes or so you can access all of that. Jenny just commented, such a great song, so many things that you can do with it, and always a hit with the kids. That is no joke. Jenny is absolutely right. This song is always a hit with kids. No, I've done it. This is a different way than I've done before. I've done a pure Jeff and Randy version of this song. I've done another version of this song. I did an exact replica of what I did in my Orff levels with this song. I've done it many different ways. It has always been successful to a certain extent. Adding the instruments is a hit for kids, and it's great to do for me. So it's, no matter what you do with it, it's a great song to try out and to see how it works for you. That said, if you've never done it before, look through some of the resources I mentioned and see like what you think works best, and try out your own version. Okay, thanks so much for coming along with me today. Oh my gosh, and Shelly says there's a cup game that goes along with this song. Cool, I've never tried that with this song. Thanks so much for all of your comments and questions. If you've left those and I missed them, and I know that I have missed a couple, I will come back to and comment on them later. Or if you want to comment on other people's questions and comments, awesome. Instagram Live, this video will be live for the next 24 hours and then it just goes away. But I'm going to take this video and put it onto YouTube. So if you're only an Instagram person and you don't do Facebook, and good for you, you can access it on YouTube since it'll go away in Instagram because Instagram is wonky. If you're on Facebook, it does live on Facebook in the videos tab of this page, Make Moments Matter Music Ed, on the side, or you can also go to YouTube, I guess, if you want. But it'll take me about a day to add that up to YouTube. So thanks so much for your questions and comments. Keep sending those. If you have any other questions or comments about this lesson or any other lesson, shoot me a message. Thanks so much for coming along with me today. Have a great night and have a great week with your kids.